Hi guys, this is Erica Tape. I'm a copywriter here at CTS and I'm filling in for Peter today. And we're talking to Katie Munson, who is with us from Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Rockford, Illinois. And for our blog on Tuesday, she wrote a post about 149 years of technology here at CPH. So today, we're not going to be talking all about CPH because that would just be kind of weird. We're going to be talking more generally just about technology and how it has changed in the church over time. So, Katie, how are you doing today?
Doing well. So good to be here.
Good. We're happy to have you with us. So, just to jump right in, the first thing that we can talk about is just an overview of how technology has changed in the church over time, even from Old Testament times to New Testament times to the Reformation to all the modern changes in the past couple centuries. So, can you just tell us about generally how things have changed for God's people with technology over time?
Yeah, that's a super wide overview. I will not do it justice, I guarantee you. But if we just look particularly at the technology used in delivering God's word, like how God's word reaches us and has throughout the years, um, Old Testament times, that was largely oral tradition and the scrolls were kept in a.
Oh, it looks like we lost her just for a sec, but we'll probably get her back in a few seconds. Um, in the blog post, she also kind of talks about how things have changed with CTS itself, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But things like going to a pneumatic tube system and all that kind of stuff with CPH, which is pretty cool. So it looks like we got Katie back, so we'll head back over to her right now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
um, Technology, great, right? Um, just in terms of the overview in church, within the church, from Old Testament times through today, we've just seen such a change in how God's unchanging word is delivered to us and how we are able to consume that from it, going from largely oral tradition, being printed on scrolls of parchment or papyrus, to the Reformation times with movable type printing press. We know that really helped spread the spark of the Reformation, and to today, where we have books and we have it delivered digitally, in print format. We also have it digitally in audio format. It's so vast, how technology, just being this idea of tools applied to a particular situation for a particular outcome, how we can see that in the church and in our lives as Christians.
So, in terms of our lives as Christians, as you were just talking about, how have you seen technology change just in the churches you've attended or worked at over the years?
Yeah. There have been quite a few changes. I remember growing up, the newsletter was always something that was mailed and I could hold in my hand. It was on paper. At that point, I didn't really know a whole lot about the process of creating that newsletter, but I'm guessing that there was some word processing involved, just the age and that I am. But before that, we saw the old-fashioned literal cutting and pasting of content down, and now we're working more with that digital, those terms, but we don't really know what what they mean in their origin. I've seen the way we are presented with the service content change. Some churches, the churches that I've worked in, have used both printed and screen-based orders of service, and that's been a big change. Also, the use of social media, and well, just the development of it, the introduction of it, and the use of it to engage those around us has really been a big change as well.
So, kind of going back to what you're saying about even in the liturgy, we might see orders of service being projected on screens as well. And we know that sometimes, even just for young people like us, it can be hard to adjust to new technologies because things are changing so quickly. But even though things change in our lives, not just with technology, but other things we experience as well, how can we find comfort in God's word, knowing that His word never changes?
Oh man. Um, there's so much comfort in that. In God's word, He is constantly telling us that He is unchanging and He is faithful. And two places that I found that's spelled out very explicitly are Isaiah and First Peter, where God tells us that after these long lists of things that change and that fail us and that just all of these things that we know will not be the same, that the word of the Lord endures forever. And of course, Peter is pointing back to that Isaiah passage, and it's just so beautiful and rich. It's a very simple truth, but it's just has so much in it.
Our tech here, who's helping run all of our technology stuff, the live stream, saw the thing behind you on the bulletin board that said something about the word of the Lord endures forever. So we like that. We smile
Oh my
about
goodness.
that.
Yes.
And then at CPH, that's our big motto too. So pretty cool that you brought that up. It's very applicable in this situation too. So with Lutheran theology, or Lutheran doctrine, I should say, we talk a lot about vocation. And we have a lot of people, even at CTS, like us, we work with technology, and that's one of the vocations that God has given us. So how can we view technology in terms of vocation, not just as, something that is for non-Christians to do, but even for Christians who work in technology and also want to serve God in what they do? How can they view technology or their technology-based jobs in terms of something that God has given them as a vocation?
Well, at the heart of all vocations is loving and serving your neighbor, and that God uses you as His mask to do that. And so He places us in different cultures and different contexts, and
we lost her real quick, but hopefully she'll be back in a sec. So in terms of the word of the Lord endures forever, and remembering that things never change, even here at CPH, things have changed in the 149 years that our company has been here. Long before, obviously, I was here, probably, well, really anybody who's watching this has been here. So, all right, we've got Katie back already, and we'll jump right back into the question.
All right. So vocation and technology, I think when we know that our vocations are those roles, those stations in life that God has placed us, and we have these particular neighbors, not just, the people next door, but the neighbors that are our families and our friends and in our workplaces, knowing that we're using, or when we look at technology and how that fits into our vocations, we can see how technology helps us to love and serve those neighbors, those people in our lives that God is using us to love. And so that might mean that we can use, like, as parents, we could use like a grocery ordering app to love and serve our family. That's how we're managing our time to get the food on the table for dinner, things like that. But also in more looking at nurturing faith life and such, there's just so many apps and other digital content delivery systems that can be used to help us to learn and grow.
Oh, we lost her again. We'll get her back in a sec. But going back to the thing I was talking about before Katie came back in and talking about vocation, on Tuesday, actually, we were celebrating the 149th anniversary of CPH and kicking off our 150th year. So we got to have a bit of a celebration and heard from Dr. Bruce Kintz, who's our CEO, talked a little bit about that and enjoyed some cupcakes and that kind of stuff. We've been enjoying the cupcakes the last couple of days, a little bit too much sugar. But we've got Katie back, so Katie, can you continue with what you were just talking about?
Yeah. The So technology and living out our vocations can be very practical, mundane things like ordering the groceries, but also those things that nurture our faith in terms of giving us access to God's word, and so that we can consume that, so that we are growing in the knowledge and love of Him.
Awesome. So I like how you were just mentioning that we can use things like Bible apps to access God's word, even using technology just to manage our time better, to serve other people, serve our neighbors, even our kids who are also our neighbors in terms of how God uses that term. But so how can we use those new forms of technology and not fear them? How can we embrace them and just not kind of be scared of them?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. I tend towards opposite ends of the spectrum, even in my own person, to either like jump on and adopt a technology right away because it's new and cool and I see the benefit of it without stopping to consider something, or I swing to the opposite side and will see just something as I'll only see its negative side and not consider how God might be using it to connect me with somebody else, or somebody, just to share His word and nurture those connections. So I think the first step is just taking a pause and recognizing that we have a choice in adopting new technology or not, and there is more of a spectrum than the two ends that I lean toward. I wrote a post a couple months ago about harnessing technology so it does not harness us. And we really kind of jump into that thinking mindset of adopting technology and how it can best serve our needs in our vocations.
Cool. It's actually kind of a great transition to the next question I wanted to ask you. Related to what you were talking about in the blog post that you just mentioned, how can Christians use technology to honor God or be better stewards of our time or serve our neighbor better?
Man, these are just such great loaded questions, and I love them. In honoring God, I think something that is helpful for me to keep in mind is how do these stack up to the rule of God's Ten Commandments, of the Ten Commandments. There are a lot of elements in the Catechism and questions that Dr. Luther wrote 500 years ago that I think can easily be applied to our use of technology and show us either as through the mirror of the law, if we want to use those fun doctrine-y words, that whether or not it honors God, is it matching that, or is it showing us that we need to adjust our mindset and our actions to be in line with His word. And similarly, to the second part of the question, just in terms of being stewards and managing the resources that God has given us, you mentioned time management, and I think things like calendars, digital calendars, are really helpful, whether you're working with a team or you're working just managing your family, but managing your family schedule, and being able to communicate in ways it's helpful as part of a church work team to be able to see my coworkers' schedules blocked out, not the specifics of those, but I know that here's a time that I could just hop over and run an idea by somebody without interrupting their focused work time. Or maybe I need to plan something another time to get their feedback on that. So calendars are helpful in terms of time management in that way.
Cool. So as we keep moving forward in the future, of course, we can never know exactly what's going to happen, but we can kind of guess based on technology trends that we're just kind of going to keep going down that road. And we see, like with kids, just using more technology, more screens, even from a younger age. And technology, of course, is being incorporated into the classroom a lot also. Oh, we lost her, but I'll ask her the question when she gets back here. But I was going to be asking her about how churches and teachers can use technology to support faith development. Katie mentioned that a little bit with, using Bible apps on your phone to get you into God's Word. We even see some of that in the Divine Service as well. So Katie, I was just talking about our last question, which is how churches and teachers can use technology to support faith development. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I love that technology allows access to really rich faith development content, both access and delivery. One of my favorite kind of connecting points is thinking about God's word in Deuteronomy 6, where he says to talk about his commandments when we get up and when we lie down and as we're walking down the road. And so in our modern culture, we have these things called podcasts. And I think that in my own life, I'm able to do that as I'm going down the road. I'm able to.
Oh, there she goes again. But it's funny that she mentioned podcasts because it's actually something that we're thinking of doing with CTS, especially with some of the technology glitches and stuff we've been having with our live streams that you might see a little bit frequently if you watch our stuff every week. So we're thinking of moving forward into the podcast range. So you might see that in the future. We might have a cooler looking sound studio. So that's something that might be on the horizon for us. But Katie, since you're back, can you can keep going if you want.
Oh, certainly. I think there's just a lot of application in terms of digital technology where we can see how God is working and giving us this gift that aligns with like Deuteronomy 6 and talking about his word when we get up and when we lie down and when we go down the road. We can listen to podcasts in the car. We can, most of us have our phones or some sort of device with us that we're able to check in with things throughout the day. And depending on where we're finding what our content sources are, that can be directing, reminding us of God's word, filling our hearts and minds with his word. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for equipping families in or through various technologies. So I'm really excited about that. I mentioned made a quick nod to some of the new CPH confirmation curriculum that really leans into technology as a way of equipping parents in nurturing the faith of their children. And that's really exciting to see.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap up here? Any final thoughts? Oh, there she goes. I guess we'll just skip the final thoughts then. Well, I'd like to thank Katie for joining us here today. And hopefully, if everything works okay with our live stream, we'll be back next week at 11:30. Same time, same place, and we'll see you next time. Have a great week.